Hey guys, PretzelMan945 here. Welcome back to another video. I anticipate this is going to be a long one because I have a lot of things that I want to talk about. Okay, I recorded that 14-second intro and then I realized I needed talking points, so I paused for like 10 minutes and thought about what to write down while also being distracted in Discord for a little bit. Um, I have my talking points now, so the review of Legend of the Galactic Heroes will now commence. Um, so the first thing I want to talk about is Reinhard as a main character. Um, so something that in fact, probably my favorite thing about this anime as a whole is the way that it approaches its characters as this idea of making them into great figures of history. Um, and no other character embodies this more perfectly than Reinhard because that is the entire point of his character. Um, he is this person who's born to a lowly common family, but rises his way through the ranks all the way to the very top of power and becomes like this establishing ruler, like so many great figures in history, like, Augustus Caesar, uh, Zhu Wanzhong of the Ming Dynasty, there's a gazillion different examples that you could look at. Genghis Khan, uh, and I fucking love the approach to not just his character, but like every character in the show this way. But because Reinhardt is the main character and that is the main lens through which he is portrayed, um, it makes like this constant conflict within his character of like um every other action that he's doing might be a thing that is setting a precedent for the future. Um and so he has to consider that while at the same time making decisions that need to be good for the present, but he also has to consider how it will change history after he is gone. And that dichotomy in his character is brilliant. Um, it's such a unique way of approaching a character that I have just never seen before in any other piece of fiction. Um, I'm writing down one more talking point here. Okay. Um, I suppose the other thing to talk about with Reinhard as a character is the way that he is. And I will talk about this when I talk about more other specific characters. But it's impossible for me to talk about Reinhardt and not mention the ways in which he is fundamentally affected by um Ice in the beginning of the show. Because at the end of season one, Ice tragically dies. Um, it's very sad. Not even close to the saddest character death in this show, mind you, but very sad death. Um, and uh, hmm, and And the way that this fundamentally affects Kirkiais's character, not Kirkiais, the way that Kirkiais funnily affects Reinhardt's character is fascinating because essentially this is the first consequence of Reinhardt's decisions in terms of trying to achieve glory and make decisions for the future which will be known to history behind him. But this is the first result of his decisions that fundamentally affect the present. And um and the way that this factors into things is just absolutely brilliant, honestly. Um, I absolutely love characters. This is transitioning into my discussion of Kirkias. Um, I absolutely love characters whose presence is felt long after their death, and that is something that this show does with a multitude of characters, all of which are done to masterful degrees. Um, Kirky Ice is, I would say, the best example purely because it lasts the longest. In terms of like the effect that his character has is seen throughout the entire rest of the show, and I think that this is done just absolutely brilliantly. Um, Kyrgyz as a character, like, before he dies, he is this fantastic anchor to Reinhardt, and he's very good as an admiral. Um, but most of his character is just more significant after he dies. Um, my favorite admiral in the show was Mittermeier. And that's because Mittermeier plays a very interesting role in the story by essentially becoming like the perfect admiral, essentially, because he is incredibly well composed. He has served Reinhard since the beginning of him trying to acquire power. He is one of Reinhard's most loyal servants possible, and he is also, like Reinhardt, a brilliant tactician, and he serves his job well as the commander of the space fleet. Um, and he also is like sort of a perfect reflection of what Reinhard's ideal servant would be and the life that they end up um, with the ideals and the policies of the Lowengram dynasty, because he ends up married, he ends up having a kid, and happily alive, I'm assuming, living for several more decades beyond the end of the show. So, um, So, because of all those reasons, Mittermeier was my favorite admiral. Another brilliant fucking character who was potentially my second favorite, an easy number three spot, Oberstein. Or Oberstein, however you pronounce it. I don't know if anyone actually dislikes Oberstein in the grand scheme of this show, but if anyone dislikes Oberstein, then they do not understand this show at all. I think that Oberstein is probably the most brilliantly executed character, at least in terms of side characters, like beyond the main characters of Reinhardt and Young. He is easily the um most brilliantly executed side character to me because if Kirky Ice was this and subsequently replaced by Hilda for the rest of the show, if the two of them act as like I talked about this dichotomy in Reinhardt's character of decisions he needs to make between actions that will cement himself in history and actions that are necessary for the present. Kirky Ice and subsequently later on Hildegard represent the actions that Reinhardt makes that cement his future, and Oberstein represents every action that is taken to cement the present because of everything that he does to secure the future of the dynasty and the fact that he is so heavily disliked, and yet every single action that he takes is one that ends up having completely sound logic in the long run. Um, and the fact that every one of these actions was done with just complete humility from his character, like from the beginning, just makes just makes his character like so fucking brilliant. Um, now one that's quite a complicated character is Voyental. Voyental is uh similar to Mittermeier in that he is this almost perfect loyal servant of Reinhard almost the entire time until his rebellion. Um uh because and yet also different because of his tragic backstory and the way that he was brought up and his subsequent extreme feelings of pride and envy. Um and I would say that I really initially had problems with the direction that um Royental's rebellious arc went on, but by the end of it, I think that it was concluded in an extremely satisfactory way. I think there was big potential for it to utterly fail, and yet it did not, thankfully. However, my biggest flaw with the show overall is something that pertains to this character arc of Royenthal's, and it's nothing to do with the character changes that he goes through himself necessarily. What I have an issue with is the fact that the inciting incident as to what causes it. I feel like for the scale of this story and the manner in which Royenthal and Reinhardt are portrayed as players on the grand stage of this story. Something as simple as a rebellion being a um incited on a planet that was secretly a riot caused by terrorists. Um, it makes sense within the lore, and yet I really don't like this because it feels so it feels so minor in scale compared to every other kind of inciting incident which leads to significant events within this show. And it feels like for something as grand as the end of Royantal's character and as drastic of a change that his arc um makes him have, um I feel like there should have been an event. I don't know what it could have been, but there should have been an event that was much bigger in scale that caused a rift between Reinhardt and Royal to the mass degree that it did. Um, but besides all those aspects, um, well, including his end and his final arc, Royal was a brilliant character to me. Um, Now the other main character, Yang Wenli. Um, so what I love about Yang to uh in comparison to Reinhard, um, is that with Yang, if um if Reinhard was the history maker, then Yang was the historian that saw the maker of history and was the one that wrote down the history made by Reinhardt. And as a result, their dynamic is fucking incredible. I will be making an updated dynamics list now that I have finished this show. Same thing with a protagonist since I already did a villains list. This dynamic is absolutely in the top 10. Um but to me this like nature of history versus the one that's seeing it happen is um just masterfully done. And I love about Young's character his inherent like passiveness, his inherent humility, everything like that, which he will be regarded as a significant figure in history, but not for the same reasons as Reinhard. And the fact that he was pining to be a historian and all these aspects of like wanting to retire early and live a simple life, like all of these aspects about Young, and you compare that to Reinhard in terms of like the differences between the two and their worldviews of not just autocracy and democracy, but also like the lens through which they view themselves having an impact on history is just beautiful. And I think that this could not be more poetically reflected in the way that Young dies. Because not only is that like completely out of nowhere that happens, but the fact that he's killed by just some random ass terrorist who uh raids his ship, um, it means that ultimately I lost my train of thought. Oh fuck, I lost my train of thought. Um, I don't remember what I was gonna say. Fuck. Okay. It's fine. Uh oh yes, 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 I remember now. I'm so ass at recording videos. Um, so Young, the way that he dies is important because um the fact that he is just shot by some random ass terrorist um is significant because that is an essential reflection of his entire character, like his death being seemingly insignificant is just such a powerful like metaphor of his role in the story and his relationship to Reinhard. Um, because the famous phrase "history is written by the victors," and the fact that Young dies in the way that he does, compared to the way that Reinhard dies, is perfectly exemplary of this idea. Um, and this is where I want to transition into talking about easily my favorite part of this show was the history of it and like the historical approach to the characters and the incredible respect that this show gives to all aspects of history because I am majoring in history at college right now. History is one of my favorite subjects. It is something I have an intense passion for. And the creator of this show, I Can Tell, also had this immense love and passion for history because it comes across in every aspect of this show's storytelling and world building and character development. Um, I feel like this point is no better exemplified by the fact that there are two entire episodes, two entire episodes, episode 40 and episode 52. Yes, I remember which ones because they were individually some of my favorite episodes in the entire series because of what they did. These two episodes were an entire history documentary within an anime episode. An entire history documentary within an anime episode. Episode 40 recounts the entire um history of humanity throughout the formation of the Republic and also the early uh centuries of the Golden Bound dynasty. And the second one uh is all about the history of Earth and how that played a role in the founding of terrorism, which is like one of the most significant plot elements. Um and the fact that there were two entire episodes which were literally history documentaries. I mean, for fuck's sake, episode 40 even had a character which was a historian talking along and commenting on events. Like, just incredible. I have never seen something like that done in any other anime I've ever seen. I've seen over 200 fucking animes. Huh. But also just like the way that the narrator speaks, like with regards to certain dialogue in like the way that things are phrased and framed as like the narrator is entering comments of um people's actions and the characters of certain people from the future and like and like commenting on whether certain actions are significant or not, and whether these significant actions would be known that they would be significant at the time to the characters that are doing them or participating in these kinds of events. And just also the fact that, like, the world building of this show is probably the most direct I've ever seen. Um, and yet it is perfectly suited for that because it is this vast, grand universe. It is a vast, grand history spanning like almost 1,000 years. At least in terms of like what's covered in the show, it is centuries upon centuries of human history, and this aspect of the human history is just incredible. And like the sheer respect and passion that the show gives to history as a subject and as a idea is just incredible. I have never seen a piece of fiction that is able to do history justice like this. And I doubt I ever will see something like this again that is able to capture the merits of history in such a way. Um, and in a similar note to this, another thing that I want to talk about is some of the more superficial aspects, such as the dialogue, the music, the animation, and stuff like this. This show has the second best dialogue in fiction to me, only behind Hannibal. Because in keeping with this idea that this is a extremely grand story, it's essentially a space epic, and there is so much like grandness to the history and the lore and everything like that. Um, the dialogue is just beautiful. There are fucking like probably thousands of absolutely beautiful analogies, um, and metaphors, and just like beautiful ways that things are phrased, which reflects the sort of grandeur and grandness of the era in which this takes place. And all of these aspects are just incredible together. Um, and then like, the fact that there is so much classical music used, particularly a lot of Beethoven, also just further contributes to this idea. Um, uh, oh man. I I love this show. It is my ninth favorite anime of all time. Um, and I doubt that I will ever see an anime like this ever again. Truly. Because the things that it is able to accomplish, and once again, I reiterate the sheer respect and passion that it goes toward history in every aspect of its storytelling, world, and characters. Um, this anime is truly one of a kind and an absolute fucking masterpiece. Um, that deserves to be watched by every anime fan. Before this video, in which I spoiled basically everything that was good about it. Um, but yeah, that's all my talking points. And since I have no need for that, it's going in my trash can now. And yeah, a much shorter video than I thought, to be honest, only 30 minutes, but I feel like I actually managed to really, um, concisely get my thoughts out in this video, aside from when I was talking about Young and I completely lost my train of thought. In general, I thought I was mostly able to do a good job of this. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.